Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And this is Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic, misogyny, and specifically the rise of misogyny in today's society. It is understandable to feel disheartened and even afraid when our hard-won rights and respect for women are being openly challenged. So whether these attitudes are in politics, in the media, or they're in your own personal relationships, they reflect the views of some men, but not all men. This is a very, very sensitive subject, and it's important to remember that there are still many good men who respect, value, and care deeply about women and our rights. So today you're going to hear from one of those men, my husband Benjamin. He and I believe that voices like his are essential because while these challenges are real, so is the hope that comes from knowing that there are men out there who stand with women and are committed to fostering a world where respect, equality, and compassion are possible. So you are not in this alone. We want to give you hope. We want you to know that while some voices have become louder than other voices in our society today, these men do not speak for all men. So thank you for being here today, honey.
My pleasure.
And thank you for talking about this subject. It's as important to me as it is to every single woman who's listening today and every man who's tuning in. This is a topic that is prevalent today in our society. It's getting bigger, and I'm speaking as a woman, it's becoming frightening in many ways to see where things are headed, and it almost seems like we're turning back the hands of time.
Yeah.
So what are your initial thoughts on why we're seeing so much anger directed towards women in today's society, especially in politics?
Well, I think that there's a fear of change. You know, as women gain power and influence, certain men feel that their long-standing dominance is being threatened, and it brings for these men who are, you know, have a foundation of insecurity. It brings a mixture of anger and insecurity.
And so how do you think the dynamics of power and gender are impacting the way women are perceived and treated in political spaces?
You know, when women speak or they lead assertively, the woman is often judged by a different standard. You know, it's a deeply ingrained double standard that favors traditionally masculine traits. So
can you talk more about that, honey? Like when you say that women are treated differently, let's dive into that a little bit.
When a man is assertive, he's powerful. When a woman is assertive, she's bitchy.
Or angry. Or...
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a double standard. So if women get negative feedback, they often don't stand up and speak for themselves and contribute to in politics, in the office, and even in the home.
For fear of being labeled a bitch.
Exactly.
Or an angry woman.
Exactly.
And being ostracized.
And if a man had said the same thing that a woman would say, they would be treated as, this is a powerful man.
Why do you think that is?
You know, I think my basic sense of men and women is that men look to women as teachers. Women have qualities that men don't have. And it's one of the reasons why men are attracted to certain women. At the same time, they also realize the power, the innate power that women have. Innate, just in the DNA. And I think through centuries, going back beyond the Old Testament, that men have done whatever they could to subjugate a woman's power because they're afraid of it. And so in politics, in the office, in the boardroom, even in the nuclear family, that the male role is often to subjugate the woman's, and because out of fear and insecurity.
But why are men so afraid of us?
Well, I think that we see the power that women have that men don't have. And I think that they may feel that they may be overtaken. And particularly for all these centuries where male dominant roles have been established, that there's this intransigence, this fear of change. So, things not only change slowly for the better, but often there can be a backlash.
But do you think men are afraid of being rendered obsolete, that women don't need them to take care of them, to provide for them? Even women can get pregnant without them.
Right.
And so in some ways it seems like men are terrified. That's why they want to take away the right to our own bodies, our ability to have abortions, or even fertility treatments. They want to stop us from all of that. And I'm wondering if that's because men are feeling like we don't need them anymore, and that women are just kind of pushing men, or had been for many years, pushing men to the side. We're even taking over in universities, getting higher degrees.
Mm-hmm. And so the question is...
Well, that we're over, in current times, it almost seems like women don't need men anymore.
Right. Well, I think little boys are grown up to know that they're as men, they're supposed to be protectors and providers. And they're supposed to be the breadwinners. And they're supposed to be the strength in the family. And when that's threatened, the whole essence, the matrix of a man is threatened.
And the truth is, we don't need men for those things anymore.
Yeah.
We don't. And it's almost like men are trying to push things back to the way they were when our mothers couldn't go out and get a credit card without a man signing for it, where they had no rights to their bodies, where I'm watching a program right now on television, it takes place in the 60s, and this woman left her husband, Natalie Portman, and she can't even sell her own car without her husband's permission.
Yeah. I think that there's always the tendency for one group to subjugate another. And by subjugating a group, it makes the subjugator feel more dominant, feel more important. And so that's been the dynamic, that for men to feel important and needed and powerful, they have to subjugate a group that they can be powerful over.
So what fears or insecurities do you think some men might be experiencing that fuel anger or resentment toward women?
I think that they may be afraid of being obsolete in this changing workplace. And there's a loss of traditional roles. There's a fear of losing relevance or status. And if a man has always seen himself as being in a dominant group, they might feel that progress for others means regression for the man. And so, if women rise up, then men will sink down. And there's also the fear of feeling less manly or not fitting into traditional roles.
As I'm listening to you talk, it's wild to me because It's almost like it feels like men want to control women, but they don't want to take responsibility for the control that they assert over women. So they take away women's rights. They take away the right to our body, our reproductive rights. They want to put us back to the 1950s, it feels like right now. But at the same time, they don't take responsibility for the families and the children they create. They're not necessarily out there. They're wanting to assert white male privilege, but at the same time, there's so many jobs and positions that white men don't even want. It's just wild to see the duplicity here. I know I'm a little off subject, but as we're talking about this, there's not accountability. It's like they want power, but then they don't want to take accountability, a lot of men, for the power that they are asserting.
Yes. And just a bit tangential to that, when we think that women only received the ability to vote, I think it was 1928. In Europe, it was most of women's rights to vote were after World War II, like 1946, 47, France and other countries. So it's this deep tradition, and many people are still on the planet who were born prior to a woman's right to vote, many men. And so they want to hold on to that tradition. And
that illusion of power.
Exactly, and the illusion of power.
And the thing that crushes my heart is that the Equal Rights Amendment still hasn't passed. And it was essentially a woman who killed that. Yeah. That's the other thing that makes no sense, is that there are women who will give away their rights to men, that will lay down and let men have control over them. And that affects not just those women, it affects all women. And so the fight that my mother and my grandmother and the women of that generation went through to be able to gain so much ground is we're losing that ground. And it's not just men who are taking it away, it's women who are giving it up. So from your perspective, what are some of the societal or cultural messages that encourage men to act or feel this way?
Well, media often reinforces these outdated masculine ideas. And, through entertainment, advertising, news coverage, society has equated masculinity with dominance and control. And it keeps sending messages that men are entitled to lead and women are supposed to follow. So we see it reflected to us continuously, in TV programs, in Nuclear Family. The father is the leader of the family. He comes home from the office where he has a job and he's a provider and essentially the protector.
Well, where we get into trouble, because you and I, in some ways, people would say, have a fairly traditional masculine-feminine dynamic in our relationship, but where we get into trouble is when we say masculine is strong and good, and feminine is bad and weak and submissive. And that is not part of our dynamic in any way, shape, or form. There's mutual respect. You know that I'm capable of doing incredible things. And even if I do defer to you and encourage a lot of your traditional male values, because I see how important that is to who you are as a man, and you do the same for me as a woman, there's mutual respect on both sides. And I think when you hear certain people in the media especially our leaders, say, disrespecting women, raping women and getting away with it, saying things like, I can grab women by the whatever, and, and that's okay. It sets a tone, and it makes it right for any man to rape. It makes it right for any man to be able to grab women or abuse women or treat women disrespectfully. And so those become the messages that we're sending our sons and daughters, that this kind of behavior, that this way of thinking, which we had worked so hard to get rid of, is okay. And that's it's not just in politics, it's in the whole, it's now pervasive. So as a man who believes in equality and respect, how does it feel to witness this kind of behavior from other men, honey?
Well, it's deeply disappointing. Their behavior often reflects deep insecurity and struggles with their own identity. And I think that's where much of this comes from, is a men's deep insecurity and the constant struggle for their own identity.
But you are such a good and fine man. I want to know from your heart, what is it like? I mean, you adore me. To think that I am living in a world that Dara, my niece, is living in a state where if she got pregnant, she couldn't get an abortion. There are women who you love and care about who are being affected by all of this. How do you feel about that?
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, disillusioning, disappointing, that instead of going forward, because we always think society's going to move forward, that people are going to have more and more rights, particularly in a country like ours. But a country like ours, and I'm a deep patriot, but it was built on white male supremacy. Other than whites didn't have were either enslaved or didn't have the right to vote or weren't considered a full person. Women, for all of those years, didn't have the right to vote. And even today, people are, their rights to vote are being eroded. So it's disappointing when we see what's happening to women, to women's rights, that we think that, wow, we made gains, we made progress, this is good, and then suddenly it disappears. We don't count on that happening. We just assume it's going to get better and better and better. And the truth is we have to keep fighting for it. We can't take it for granted. It's not automatic that things are going to get better or that things won't be taken away from us.
So what impact do you think this widespread anger toward women has on women's mental health, confidence, and ability to participate freely in society?
Well, women often find themselves self-censoring. Or they can experience anxiety or depression because, often in a man's world, they have to lose their femininity to fit in, or they have to lose their voice to fit in.
Or to pick up the slack from men who put them in these positions and then don't show up and take responsibility. Yeah. So women don't just give up their whatever you said, they have to fight. They have to become very masculine and hardened.
Well, they have to exert this extra energy just to be seen and heard. And it can be mentally and emotionally exhausting.
But not even to be seen and heard, just to get by, to take care of their children when
Yeah.
they get abandoned, to take care of those babies when they're raped or when they don't want to have kids and they have to have them because they can't get an abortion. And then a man who gets them pregnant, that what laws are there to hold him responsible? And then it's not just the mental health, it's the physical health. Women's health care is deteriorating because doctors are afraid to take care of them. They're waiting until they're on their deathbed to perform abortions. And so not only, I mean, we're scared. We're scared. I put my hands together and I thank God, I thank the powers that be that I am not in a position where I can get pregnant now. I am so grateful through my entire years of being able to have had a child. Abortion was legal. I could have gotten an abortion at any time during that whole time in my life. Other women, my own niece, doesn't have that right. This is devastating.
Yeah.
So what role do you think social media and public discourse play in amplifying these negative sentiments towards women?
Well, social media amplifies everything because they want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be cutting edge, even if it's untruths, that it catches the attention, it catches the eyeballs, it catches the ears. So, and it can, social media can be contagious. So in some of these platforms where there's outrageous views on women and misogyny and the dominance of men, that it encourages other people to get excited about these beliefs and feel that they're part of a movement against women. So social media, has many positive aspects, but because each platform tries to be seen and heard, that they can really cross the line.
Well, and there's also, I think, something a lot of women don't realize is that there is a very small percentage, I don't remember off the top of my head the actual percentages, but there are an incredible number of men, something like 70%, who do not get responses from women online.
Yeah.
They write messages constantly, and there's a very small percentage of men who get the vast majority of responses, and then there's this whole huge number of men who get nothing.
Yeah.
And it brings up anger and resentment and hatred because they're not getting sex, they're not getting attention, they're not getting their masculinity mirrored back to them. And these are the guys that join these groups.
Yeah, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that as men get angry, they push women away, and they're not capable of a loving, sustainable relationship, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That everything they do online or on social media or in real life is to prove the point that women, there aren't good women out there, that they have reason to be angry and misogynistic.
Yeah. What advice would you give to men who might feel conflicted about the way they view or respond to powerful, outspoken women?
Well, this is a tough one because it means for a man to do his work, to really, do personal growth work. And that means looking at their own biases and their own insecurities. And that's painful. And a lot of men can't do that by themselves. They need help, whether it's workshops, books,
Therapy.
personal coaches. all of that. It's very difficult, and they may not be, there's not a good chance they're getting it from their friends or at the office. So they have to do this on their own. It's their own personal journey. First, they have to realize the importance of it, and then they have to find a way to and be willing to change, and then find a way to change.
Well, and just for the record, you did years of therapy, group and individual.
Yeah.
Many, many, many years, and other things as well.
And I hated it until I loved it, because it was pushing my boundaries. I didn't know what to think, what to say, what to feel. And in the beginning, I hated it, but because I hated it, I knew it was important.
Yeah.
And then eventually I began to love it. And then eventually I began to outgrow it and could make my own decisions and find my own way.
And it took years.
Yeah.
Yep, this was not an overnight thing.
Yeah.
Do you think some men are threatened by the progress women have made in gaining influence and power? And if so, why?
Well, men are accustomed to this authority. It's like they're born into it automatically. So anything that challenges that is threatening. And, in the business world, men traditionally have always had advantage over women, and so for them to lose that advantage and have it based on merit is, so they're afraid of losing these traditional advantages, and many men, particularly if they've been in the business world for a long time, just either haven't adapted or aren't willing to adapt to new workplace dynamics.
Well, and I think you said something, that without doing work on ourselves, you talked about your parents and you said probably everyone could benefit from some really good therapy.
Yeah, all parents, yeah.
All parents. Yeah. Well, I think everybody could benefit from really good therapy and coaching.
Sure. It's because we can't do things alone, and sometimes it takes sitting across from someone to be challenged and to have to defend our view, and after a while we may see that some views are indefensible.
It's also very humbling and vulnerable to be in therapy because the way therapy, at least traditionally, worked was you had a person with a certain skill set and knowledge and insight into human behavior that you weren't privy to. And so they were looking at you through a lens and putting you under a microscope that you didn't always have. It's almost like they had the rules to the game, but you didn't. And so I know I felt so vulnerable when I went to therapy because I felt scrutinized by the therapist. But in a way, it was terribly uncomfortable, like you said.
Right, and there's a difference between feeling scrutinized and feeling seen. And I think a really good therapist, the person sitting across from them will feel that they're being seen.
Well, I think eventually it might get there, but in the beginning, when you've never done that before and you're opening up in ways you've never opened up to another person who may be wiser and have their life more together, or at least you think they do at the time. You're hoping they do, right? And so you're laying yourself bare in front of this person, and it's incredibly vulnerable to do that. But it's also very healthy and good to do that. Many people walk through their whole lives hidden. They never open up. They never are really emotionally naked and seen.
Or have their beliefs challenged.
Yeah. And I think a lot, and then you have some other people who have very unhealthy mentors and people who train them in the worst of ways
Yeah.
and teach them bad behaviors
Yeah.
and manipulation.
Whether it's cohorts like frat boys or basketball coaches
Or a
or
father
a father, yeah,
who has poor morals.
or on social media, and people are living on social media more and more.
And we're being fed this stuff. It's really unhealthy. How do you think women can continue to stand up and make their voices heard in spaces that are often hostile towards them?
Well, first, I think it's important for any group, particularly women, to have their own network, their own social network of support, finding other women that they can talk to and share their thoughts. And it's also important for women to express to really stand up and let their voice heard, because if it's heard once, they have the encouragement to speak up again and again. So often there's a fear that if they speak up, they're going to be slammed down, and they're going to be in a worse position than if they didn't speak. So it's finding a network. It's standing up. It's having that courage to speak up and be respected.
Well, and my greatest fear is that the backlash for women will be that they will hate men, will go back to the women's liberation,
Right.
And the feminist movement where men and women became enemies, which that's how it works.
I just experienced that at a graduate at E&D who's the sweetest woman, and she asked for my help in doing a presentation, a humorous anecdote, and she was talking about an appliance. This was probably in the 50s or 60s, probably the 50s, and she kept referring to her new General Electric stove as a male chauvinist General Electric stove, and she used that because the punchline was that she, for Thanksgiving, she put the turkey in and forgot to press the on button, and she used male chauvinist to refer to the stove probably 4 or 5 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and then I very gently mentioned it to her, and then the next day I got a really nice email just saying, you're right, you're right. There was a lot of anger in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honey, we have to end for today. I don't feel like we've really completed this discussion. It feels like we're halfway through it. So I'd like to invite you back again to have part 2 of this talk. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, it's a great discussion.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's one that needs to be had, and I want us to even unwrap this a little bit more. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. If you'd like to learn more about the work we do, please go to lisashield.com. Click the button all over my website to watch my free presentation. You can sign up for a call with a member of my team. We will talk to you about how we can help you find a wonderful man, a man who loves, respects, and adores women like my husband, Benjamin. They are out there. It's more important than ever that you don't harden your heart and give up on love and give up on men. So please let us help you find the guardian of your soul. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time with part 2 of this talk.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.